Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to BoatLife Live 2022. I'm on the stage here with Stuart Austin from Promarine Finance, and you're going to tell us all about how to buy a boat, how to use your money wisely, and why you shouldn't do like me, buy boats with cash. Right. The summary, Stuart.
Well,
what is Promarine Finance? Come on.
This slide, Mark, was put together from a presentation done at Southampton. So I think I'll perhaps be skimming through these if I was doing that clicker, which I know I've just asked you to do the clicker. But
Southampton, schmampton. Come on.
Yeah,
this is BoatLife Live here.
Yeah, it feels like it. So Promarine Finance is a business that I started in 2010. We launched at Southampton Boat Show in 2010. And it was to provide a much more bespoke, friendly, caring boat buying finance service, where a lot of the major banks following 2008 had decided to exit the boat finance market, and it left, I think there are just 4 of us now.
And that's because it was a risky market?
Was it a risky market? Well, we don't think it's a risky market. We were not financing boats prior to 2010, so what happened in the financial crash, I'm not too sure. But when you hear the likes of some of the banks that were in it, and I wouldn't mention the name Barclays, but that would be one example, we're saying to another competitor, what's the biggest boat you financed? And they'd be saying, mine's 25 million, what's yours? It's 50 million. And, wow, where is it? I've no idea. And that was kind of their approach in 2008. And what they'd all decided to do was to exit the small boat market. And the market now really, for boat finance, really starts from 100 grand. And we start at 10. And we top out at probably 500, but typically 150 would be more of our norm.
So from your comment earlier, other banks are available, just to cover us there. So you came to this with a fresh view of how to finance boat buying.
I wouldn't say it was a fresh view, but I've been in the finance industry for 25 years, and I was also, and still am, a sailor. And I was explaining to somebody why we didn't finance boats. And I actually got annoyed with myself because I was giving the answers without actually knowing why we didn't. And I took it upon myself, along with some other boat brokers, to find out what marine finance was all about. And it just seemed to be something that we could do and decided to do. And that was 2010.
So this takes me on to the next question. What's the difference about marine finance?
Well, marine finance is specifically a marine mortgage, generic term marine finance, but it specifically is a marine mortgage. And the term mortgage does mean it's very similar to a house mortgage or a property mortgage. And that is a loan, but it's secured against the boat. And the boat is your security. The alternatives which tend to be commonly asked about are personal loans. And the personal loans are just generic loans available to private individuals, which tend to top out at probably maybe 10,000, maximum 20,000, without needing a second charge on a property, which not everyone is in a position to be able to do, or would particularly choose to do, or even existing mortgage providers allow them to do. So personal loans are great for low value purchases, but certainly over 20,000, then they tend to be non-existent.
Now, Stuart, I should say, I'm new to this. Like I said, I've been buying my boats with cash. If there's any questions from the audience as we go along, do shout up, stick your hand up, and if it's a relevant thing as we're talking about, ask your question. Moving on. How finance can help customers and brokers. So do you work through a broker system?
We are working with a number of brokers. However, we've kind of changed the purchasing chain. We appear now via our website to customers that are even thinking about buying boats before they found a boat. So typically, they will probably have come to us before they've gone to a broker. That's not true all the time, but it often is. But where our approach to it, if you look at where finance appears in most consumer marketplaces, whether it be home improvements or consumer electronics, motor finance, home improvements, then the lenders are always trying to push the sale of the product right at the start with minimum deposit and that kind of thing. And where
And that can get people in trouble.
Well, I'm not too sure whether their lending is that freely available these days to get people in trouble now. I would say probably pre-2008, it certainly did. And I don't think necessarily debt for debt's sake is a great thing. But where we help is that people buying boats, it's a very emotional and passionate decision to buy. And if you go with a budget of 20,000, you can almost guarantee the boat that you want is 30,000 or 40,000. And that we see that regularly where someone's come to us with a boat budget and they come back, I've seen the boat I really want, it's another 10.
And of course, the running costs, marina fees,
well,
upkeep.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you need to take those into account. But we will help them with that, and we will ask them to explain how they've come to their decisions. But enabling them to get the boat they really want is far more important, and lending them a lower amount with a bigger deposit to work around their budget to enable them to get what they want is where we try and help them.
And is that because you are a sailor and you know the marine market, and you can give them some advice about the bigger owning of boats and getting into the marine market?
Possibly partly that, because my colleagues are power boaters, motor boaters, sailors as well. I think probably it enables us to understand why they're doing this. And if we can understand that. So we're not really interested in, or we don't see many people wanting a bigger boat because their friend's got a new one and they want the bigger one than him. It's really is trying to understand what they want to do. And if the budget is tight, we ask them to go and look at it and review it and be aware of what those things are. And of course, a more expensive boat could well be a newer boat, and the running costs on a newer boat will be less than typically what they are on a used boat.
Now, you might have covered this before, but things have obviously changed. You started talking about that and I interrupted you. How did things have changed since the dreaded crash of 2008?
So the 2008 period of getting money was almost walking into any bank or any finance company, given the name and the boat you want, and there's the answer, yes, off you go and get it. Since then, that approach probably has proven faulty for a few of those lenders. But now there are only 4 lenders in the marketplace. 3 of them are banks and ourselves. And so we are independent, we're not a bank. And we provide a much more personal service. You only need to know what it's, well, most people are telling me trying to get a credit card or even open a bank account these days is not necessarily an easy, straightforward thing to do. If you're self-employed, if you're not a homeowner, you know, a lot of these products and services are just not available to you.
So I can't imagine walking into a bank and trying to explain the ideal boat that I want, yeah, and to get an intelligent answer back about have I thought of this and have I thought of that. So yeah, that's obviously a very clear. So there's 3 banks and you.
Yeah.
What is the process that I come to you? What sort of service, what's the process that you offer?
Yeah. So as I mentioned to you, our process starts online now. And in fact, that finance calculator, which is on our website, and also will link to some of our broker partners. That is where our boat buying journey starts. I'm a great believer in that whatever you're trying to sell or provide, price is the first obstacle. So we put our prices online right at the start so that there's transparency. That's our pricing system. And that is where that boat buying journey starts. And from there, then it starts with an application, which is a simple one page, again, online, and then it's a request for bank statements. So that's where that journey starts.
So it really is that simple?
Yeah.
It really is that simple. One page online?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how, ultimately, someone's got to make a decision along the line. Is there a conversation before that? Just tell us the process of that decision making.
Yeah. So from the point of view, from the point that we get an application, which is that simple form, that comes into us, and we will also ask for 3 months bank statements. We are wholly interested in affordability, and we want to make sure that the amount of money we lend to our customer is not going to give them financial stress. And if we will always have a conversation. We want to understand what they do for a living, how they plan to use the boat, what their boat experience is, and what they want to do and what they want to achieve. Because sometimes there are questions to be asked or raised financially. Most people that we speak to are creditworthy, to be honest. If it's a little difficult, and it might be, a good example would be someone who wants to live aboard on a canal boat, for example, and they're moving from rented accommodation to a canal boat. If the rent that they're paying is similar to what the repayment is to us, then we consider that to make sense. If that mortgage amount is more, or they haven't been paying rent, and their finances look a bit thin, then we might ask them to go back and supply us with the information how they believe they can afford it. Sometimes they work out for themselves they can't, or other times they'll present a reasonable case that we'll support.
So all too often, I'm sure everybody out there understands that you ask a bank, an insurance company, whatever, and its computer says no. You feel like the computer has more of an answer. Tell me, Stuart, how much of a human element are you putting into these decisions now, through your experience, from your knowledge of the market?
It's 100% human. Yeah,
that's amazing. Yeah. That's fantastic.
So I know for a fact, because we've spoken to some other banks about personal loans, and personal loans. I mean, these banks are lending 100 million a month. I mean, that's just beyond my comprehension. And it's all based around algorithms. It's postcode driven, and they work out what you are, or they believe they work out what you are like as an individual based on your postcode. I don't know how you do that. So there was always a conversation with one of my team. We want to know the person. And it's also absolutely essential that we like the person we're speaking to. And they need to like us, because if that doesn't work, then it's a no from either sides. So we need to like the person, and we need to understand and agree with what they're trying to do.
Now, obviously, this isn't a situation that anyone ever wants to get into, but say I've come through you and you've lent me some money, and my situation's changed.
Yeah.
How does that process look? First of all, how do I start telling you that I'm in trouble? Yeah. And then how do you help me out, if you possibly can? Well,
as we all know, we've just come through a period of time where a lot of people were in that situation. I understand from the finance market, obviously I'm talking about COVID there, and I understand from the finance market we've been fortunate in that we've had very few situations where we've been asked for assistance. But I would like to think everybody that we've dealt with spoke to one of us at some time during that journey. And so I don't think it's difficult for anybody to pick the phone up and say, this is my situation, how can you help? And the first question back is, how do you want us to help? What help do you need? And I think, I can tell you now, without exception, we helped absolutely everybody. And everybody, without exception, honoured their agreements and with us. So we will always try and help, and whether that being reducing the payments for a period of time or just give them a short break. But it was always a personal call to do that.
Well, that's really refreshing, Stuart, to hear. Down to the nitty-gritty of it all, documents, and you've already said that the application is just a one-page application, and proof of bank statements. Talk us through the other documents that you'll need.
Yeah, so this is when it does get slightly more protracted and more complicated. The easy part is saying yes most of the time to people that apply to buy boats. All our offers go out subject to survey, valuation and satisfactory title documents. And by title documents, that is the bills of sale, proof of VAT purchase on new boats, particularly builder certificates. So whenever anybody's buying a boat, whether it be for cash or with finance, we would always encourage them to follow this route, because the title documents give a good idea and indication as to whether the person selling the boat is entitled to do so. The boat market is very unregulated. There is no V5 document, there is no Swansea DVLC for boat finance. There is the MCA, and that's about it. But there's no fixed rule about how people register their ownership or their financial interest. So we do our best by making sure that whoever's selling the boats we're financing, that they have at least 5 years original proof of title. And that sometimes isn't easily available. So then we get involved in talking to the brokers, the previous vendors, going back to previous owners before them, because it can be quite complicated. People sadly die, but then the person selling the boat hasn't been bequeathed the boat. So who are they? And it's interesting and complicated, but it all goes down to making sure that whoever's buying the boat is legitimately getting title to it.
So this is really just you doing your due diligence, making sure that that people aren't selling boats that aren't completely 100% ready to be sold.
Absolutely, and those selling them sometimes will consider us perhaps a little bit of a pain, but I would like to think those buying them appreciate the efforts that we've done.
You certainly look after that side of the environment. So
we certainly help our customer, because if they've bought that boat today and everybody's excited, they want the boat that they've fallen in love with, but in years to come when they decide to sell it, it's going to be a lot easier for them if they had what was right on day one. We'll help them sell it on day whatever it is in the future.
And of course that comes from experience of being in the market and understanding it. Just looking out onto the audience, just a little show of hands of who here are looking to buy a boat and whether boat finance will be interesting for you to maybe help that dream. Look at the few hands coming up, that's good. And well, here we're at a boat show. And if you were going to go down that road, how, just from the chat this morning, this afternoon, how do you feel that you understand the process? Seems, I mean, get on the internet, fill in the first form, and go from there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure whether we talk about that process as we're going to. If you want to just skip on through that slide, then I dare say, and probably one more. So from the point of view of that title documentation, at this point, a buyer probably has not paid out any money. Possibly they might have been asked to put a deposit. And at this point, we would, unless it's a new boat, we would insist on the boat that's been purchased is surveyed. Different boats, we see things from ribs, which are minimal surveys, through to motorboats and yachts, which obviously yachts become more complicated with keels and rigging, and then canal boats, which people tend to be a little bit blasé about, but they are just as important, if not more so, to see what's going on underneath the waterline. And that doesn't matter whether the boat's 1 year, 2 year, or 20 years old. You need to know what's going on beneath the waterline.
So I've got my eyes on this beautiful old gaff rig boat.
Yeah.
It's not a new boat, it's a fairly old boat. It's got wood on it.
Yeah.
And it looked pretty good when I went round, but the survey has now found a couple of things wrong. There's a few things in the engine.
Yeah.
There's an oil leak. So I now come back with the survey. Yeah. How does that work? Do you try to help them bring the price of the sale down? Where do you come involved?
Inadvertently, that's probably the end result. But Firstly, I mean, you picked a wooden boat in this example there. We haven't financed many wooden boats, but the ones that we have are absolutely beautiful. Wooden boats tend to be at the opposite end of the spectrum in terms of maintenance and upkeep. So we always want to make sure that whatever boat someone's buying, whether it be a wooden boat, whether it be a sail away canal boat or an older gaff rig of GRP construction, whatever it is, the person has got the knowledge and awareness of what the upkeep of that particular boat will be. So if you're going to buy a wooden boat, I want to make sure that you've got the skills to keep a wooden boat in the to the upkeep that is going to be safe and maintain its value and enjoyment factor. Similarly with a fit out, if you're going to fit out a canal boat, there are plenty of half-finished sail away canal boats. We want to make sure that that fit out is a reasonable standard, that you'll enjoy it and the next owner. But generally, without being specifically about a wooden gaff boat, if that survey comes back, our first concern is that boat fit for purpose? That's the main reason for having the survey. The boat needs to be fit for purpose. And if it isn't fit for purpose, what needs to happen to make it fit for purpose? Now, a boat survey is, let's face it, the boat surveyor's reputation and insurance is on the line if he gets it wrong. So they're looking to cover themselves as well here. But they will also put various disclaimers on their survey to start with. So the things that they're pointing out are probably simplistic and obvious. And the ones that they always put on there are get the engine manufacturer or agent to service and review the engine. So they immediately put a disclaimer on the engine. Age of rigging. But we want that boat to be safe. So gas is a big one. If there's gas on the boat and there's a problem with it, we want it fixed. In terms of safety equipment and fire equipment, that tends to be fairly easy to put right, and we would think that would be common sense. But if there's a hull fault, or the engine's loose, or the prop's loose, or the propellers come out, or the rigging needs changing, then we would be encouraging the buyer to have a discussion with the broker and the vendor. And they will either come to an agreement such that the vendor will pay and put that right, or they will discount the boat by the cost to put it right. But at least everybody knows what condition the boat is in and how much it will cost to put right. And that might well immediately disqualify whichever boat it is, whether it be a canal boat that's just gone porous, or whether it's some other boat with major hull issues.
So, Stuart, what I'm picking up here is you're not just a finance company. You're actually someone who's going to hold my hand all the way through the buying experience and possibly stop me making a really terrible mistake because I haven't thought of these problems.
I hadn't thought that, but I think that's probably true, actually. And if you read, our Google reviews are full of people be appreciating that approach. And yeah, we do it. And I think that's probably... There's a couple of reasons why that's probably true for us, is that, one, we're a small team of boaters, but also it's our own money. And when it's your own money and you're lending to people that have been in the same position that we're all in, then you want to make sure that you look after them as well as you can, because they're customers for us for potentially 10 years or more. So, we're there for the long distance, not just the short term.
Now, before we go on to the next slide and talk about the end game when they sail off into the sunset, do you have any stories of people that have started off in little dinghies or little motorboats and now are driving huge sunseekers that you've helped them along the way, boat by boat, as they slowly move up?
Well, there is. It sounds a bit cringy the way you put that question, but I'm sure there are a few that, we've got one guy who's a serial boat buyer, and he bought 3 last year, and each one was, and this goes, there's an element, part of it is funny, but it's also true that buy the boat that's right for you now. And, but everybody who's been in the market buying a boat thinks, oh, I'll buy this boat, I'll be able to use it from a growing family, I'll be able to use it in the Solent, I'll be able to use it in Biscay, I'll cross the Atlantic, it'll be good in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years time. And you never find the right boat. So I always say, get the boat that's right for you now. Because as proven by your question, particularly in this current market, you can easily sell the boat. And if it doesn't prove right, change it. Our finance agreements, you can settle at any time in full or in part without penalty. And so we've got someone who's bought 2 ribs and ended up in a motorboat at Southampton Boat Show, and their first rib was bought in February last year, and within 6 months they've changed it 3 times. And there are people that are making money out of selling their boats. I mean, they were doing it before this mad rise that we've seen in the last couple of years, but they will take a boat, upgrade it, improve it, and sell up and move on.
Now, I think I know the answer to this one, but is there ever such thing as a boat as an investment? What do they hold their price, wear and tear?
Well, up until April 2020, I would have thought no. But certainly since April 2020, boat prices have been going up. And, you know, we at Southampton, this felt a little bit awkward, I have to say, that one of our customers who was changing their 3rd boat, they'd bought a Sunseeker, an older Sunseeker, for 115 grand. And they were selling it and we were financing it to their buyer, and it was 150 grand 12 months later. And their new buyer was then borrowing, you know, the maximum we will lend, which is 80%. So we were lending 120 against a boat that was purchased 12 months ago for 115. That felt uncomfortable, to be honest. But fortunately, we then financed the part exchange that the other buyer had, and they put their part exchange money into their boat. And so we lent 60 grand instead of 120, and that made me feel happier, and it made their payments a lot lower as well.
So it's a good time to be buying boat.
If you can get one. And that's another reason we talk about finance helping people. Boats are selling so quickly. Literally driving over to this show on Wednesday, one of our new applicants, they'd only partly applied, and they rang on Wednesday afternoon saying they'd seen a canal boat that day. The 3 other people were buying that boat. Could we approve it quickly? We were in the car driving over. My colleagues were, it was something like about 4 o'clock on Wednesday. I got them an acceptance by 8 o'clock Wednesday night. The seller, which was a broker, had sold that boat at 7 o'clock. And that sold in 4 hours. So I think a 4-hour turnaround out of hours, I thought, well, we've helped them here. If you're thinking about buying a boat and you need finance, get your finance first. We can easily transfer the finance offer to whatever boat you want. But if you find one, don't wait and hang around, because they'll go.
Now, that's really, really good advice. And that really does take us on to ending the agreement and completion.
Yeah, so this is the boring bit, really, that nobody really thinks about when they're buying the thing. But we touched upon this about, you know, what do people do if they're going through difficult times? Well, obviously get in touch. But equally, many of our customers are having good times as well. So we're always available on the telephone or email. And, you know, people can talk to us, and they can overpay, they can reschedule, they can shorten the agreement, they can reduce the payment. There's lots of that. And it's who makes those decisions when you speak to people? Well, in our organisation, it's myself or Liza who's sitting down there. We will try and help. And it can be done the same day. You know, we're not talking about days, weeks, months. You know, during the pandemic, when I was told some of our competitors were not answering the phone, it was on a voicemail, and the voicemail said, send an email, and the automated email response was, we'll get back to you in 6 weeks. Well, if we haven't, we're available on the phone now. And that goes through the whole of this process. And at the end of the day, when you've sold your boat, whether it be part exchanging for an upgrade or just settling it to own it outright, we'll just send you all that title documentation back. You'll have it all there ready so that your ownership is clear and transparent. And we'll, you know, if you want to buy the new one, then we'll help you with that as well.
Well, I'm picking up, Stuart, a really bespoke service, a service that maybe when you call, you don't just get an answer phone, you actually speak to someone. You're going to get advice about what is quite a tricky market, the boating, sailing, wooden boats, fiberglass, osmosis, engines, all these sort of things. And you're going to help the buyer through to make sure they get that right boat. Ladies and gentlemen, have we got any questions from the audience while Stuart is here? Sir. Simple interest rate. The typical.
So our interest rates will vary. They're all on our website, and they'll be between 12.9 and 16.5 as an APR. But the important part of that is that you can settle or overpay at any time, and there's no penalty in that.
Any other questions? Sir. So the question there is, how do you handle new boats where there's a deposit?
Yeah. Just have it. Is that a canal boat or? Oh, okay. So we do stage payments. So as I said, the maximum we lend is 80%. So in that scenario, we would want you to pay the first 20%, and then as and when those stages have been agreed in your build contract, we'll release those stages as long as you're happy. Depending on who the builder is, what the kind of boat is, we might want to have a surveyor confirm that the boat has been built to the standard and is at the stage that you're expecting it to be at. Because we know about boats to some extent, but we're not builders and we're not surveyors. And we always want to make sure that our interests, our customer interests, and our interests are exactly the same. So we want to make sure that the boat is at the stage of completeness and to the standard that you'd expect. And then at the end of that, usually during that stage payment period, we'll do just interest only. And then at the end of the stage payments, we'll convert that into a fixed rate, fixed term marine mortgage, whichever term you want.
Any other questions? Well, what are the common, that's a really good question, common pitfalls?
It's very generic. If you've got a particular boat type in mind, because it might be slightly different answer to depending on what it is. It's sailing yacht. What age are you looking at? Sorry? Okay, so I think the only thing I'd say about pitfalls is that make sure you get a professional survey done. And if you can attend with the surveyor, watch the surveyor and see what he does. And a good surveyor, some surveyors don't want the buyer to be present, but I would question why that is. And you know, if you're particularly if you're new to boating, but even if you're not, attending the survey with a surveyor, seeing what he's looking at and how he's actually conducting what he's doing will give you a better knowledge of that particular boat. But if you don't buy that boat, it might help you in shortcutting the process when looking at other boats as well. You get to see what it is they're testing and question and ask them, because most of them I find are helpful and willing to share their knowledge. And though relatively to the cost of the boats, surveys probably cost between, on average, £400, £500, which compared to the cost of a boat that you're buying is a relatively small amount. So I wouldn't shortcut on that.
Well, Stuart, for me, I have understood a lot more about your business. You're not a computer says no bank. You're a company that listens to each and every customer that comes through the door, wants to live out their dream by buying a boat, the boat right for them, and you're going to hold their hand and help them make sure that that's as stress-free as possible. Thank you very, very much for coming along this afternoon at BoatLife Live and helping us understand about what was a pretty dry subject, and I think you've really animated it to certainly answer some of those questions. Thank you very much. Let's have a round of applause for Stuart, Promarine. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. I enjoyed your questions, so I look forward to receiving your application.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I'm sure if you've got any questions at all for Stuart and his team, get over to the stand. I'm sure they'll be very happy to help. And good luck and happy sailing.